they were this close to mandating that we basically have a Green New Deal in our global shipping fleet. 80% of our economy is based on trade. It would have been devastating. In fact, it would have added $1 billion a month to the cost of sending our goods around the world or receiving goods. And we got fired up as a cabinet. The EU, Brazil, and others thought this thing was a done deal. We got everybody involved, including the president. He came in off the top ropes, and we defeated that vote. I think we just saved the American consumer a massive, what would have been the first UN tax in global history just this past week. So that's the kind of fighting that we're doing in the types of these organizations and the kind of wins that we have to deliver for the American people.
So it sounds like that in a case like this is why you don't just walk away from
that.
Would be
look, if we just walked away, they would have done it. We would have ignored it. But you know what? As whether it's our farmers exporting our crops or our manufacturers bringing in certain parts they need or what have you, everybody would have been affected. So I'm squarely in the camp of let's fight. Let's fight for the American consumer and the American people and American industry. And to the extent our economy is touching the world, we have to be engaged in these organizations.
So on the global maritime thing that we were talking about there in London, I was going to ask about that in a little bit, but the what we saw is that they were very, very close to doing this. And then
it was, from their perspective, a done deal.
Right. So then Secretary Rubio and President Trump, yourself, all start sounding the alarm, and then you guys totally turn the tide against it.
It was also Secretary Duffy, Transportation, Secretary Wright, Energy, right? It was, of course, Secretary Rubio. It was really an across the board, a number of senators that were raising the alarm bells as well, especially with big ports and where shipping and trade really matter to their states and districts. So it was one of those things that was kind of bubbling along, and we're ringing the alarm bells, and then we just grabbed a hold of it, and the president brought what only he can do with a powerful truth. And this is what they're not used to with Biden and the previous administration. We said there will be consequences if you do this, and we laid out what those consequences were. Now, we were accused of being diplomatic gangsters and bullies and what have you, but look, you're just, in fact, it was they who were being the climate bullies, and we're not going to allow them to do that to our shipping fleet. And if it had happened, here was the real secret. The EU was subsidizing all the fuels, the biofuels that they wanted to push our ships to, and the only place we could retrofit our ships were in Chinese ports and shipyards. So this would have been a win for the EU, a win for China, a loss for the United States, and we said we're not going to have it, and we got in there and won.
So can you explain what would have been implemented had they done this? And then also, are we on guard? Are they going to try this again through this organization or through another one? And how do we protect this from happening?
So essentially what would have been implemented is if we had fossil fuel burning ships by a certain date, 5-10 years from now, starting next year, if we had, coal-fired, gas-fired, oil-fired ships, this global organization was going to impose a fine on those shipping companies, of course, and that would have been to the tune of $1 billion a month globally. That would have been passed on to the consumers, obviously, and that money then would have formed a UN-run green climate slush fund to the tune of 12 to 15 billion a year that would have turned around and done more and more of this. It really would have been the first global green tax. And I think we would have felt it through inflation. We would have felt it on our consumer shelves. And it would have been yet another assault on the American oil and gas industry.
Right, and so are they trying again?
Of course they're going to try again. Yeah. So because we came at this, frankly, a little bit last minute, we won, but we delayed the vote until next year. We're going to make our position crystal clear. And I don't think this thing's going to get through. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's what's happening in these over 80 organizations around the world. And what it really amounts to is a climate ideology that is nonsensical. It's an ideology that just doesn't make sense. For example, in AI, a big piece of that is power. you can't power AI through wind and solar. You just can't. And we already know the president's problems with wind. We already know that the vast majority of solar panels are made where? In China. But we need an all of the above solution. We need nuclear, we need gas, we need oil, we need coal, and those other renewable forms and forms of energy in order to win. But what we find is even when we reach, say, some kind of trade deal with a country or with the EU, then they try to backdoor these regulations in favor of them and against us through these international organizations that are often under the UN umbrella. And that's why we need fighters in here. I have Tammy Bruce that will be going to the Senate to be the deputy ambassador here. We have myself and we have other members of the team that 100% believe in the president's America First agenda, and we're going to start fighting and blocking and tackling in these organizations.